And I think we've actually managed to do an intro with me driving without cocking. Nobody in the chat could said that you could actually hear me talking. But can you hear me talking now? I'm not going to go any further if I am muted like normal. So just let me know if I am talking. It seems like I am. There's a bit of a delay. So, I didn't mute myself. Okay, yeah. So people say that I am talking, so we're up and running. Right. First things first. I just want to wish Creaky and the Creaky family all the best for anyone that's seen the community post that he put up at this time. So you are left with me tonight. The guy this way. I'll let him introduce himself in a minute. Jessica G saying she can't hear me, and I know she's joking. I know she's trying to wind me up. I hope. So I'll introduce the guy next to me well, I'll let you introduce yourself. Shall I just pass over to you and you can introduce yourself and then I'll tell them what the show's about. Off you go, mate.
Hi all, my name is Joe. I've been asked to come along today to give my opinion on the current COVID crisis. So that's who I am. Live in the Cotswolds, family man, and no real qualifications as such to clarify or disclarify COVID. I just know from my looking into certain things that a lot of things don't make sense, so it does make me question it.
Brilliant. And we sort of bumped into each other in like a chat forum type thing, and I've invited Joe on, and essentially we've shared quite a lot of emails since he agreed to come on, and we're going to work through a lot of the points that he sent us in the email. So we're going to start off with the idea is that hopefully, from my point of view at least, that I can sort of educate Joe a little bit on more the science side of it. And what I really want, because I'm concerned about the amount of misinformation that there is out there, I at least want Joe to go away having the correct information to then make his own mind up. So if there's any misinformation that's out there, I'm hoping, that Joe's got, I'm hoping that I can address that. And I'm sure Joe will be hoping he could rub some things off of me as well. So let's see. Point number one, Joe, was the virus. Do you want to give us your take on what a virus is, what your concerns are, and and then maybe I'll respond. And if you want me to bring up any of the videos or links, let me know.
Yeah, I think regarding the virus, first of all, when sort of addressing the subject, we need to probably say the utmost thoughts and prayers with the sort of victims of this, and especially with their families. Which have gone through a sort of hell of a time as well, especially not being able to go to funerals or actually celebrate their life as well. Must be extremely hard. But from what I see on the television regarding, first of all, let's take it back to the beginning. Let's look at what we saw from China in the beginning. We saw videos of people dying driving the cars. We saw videos of people dying at bus stops. But we've not yet seen that anywhere else in the world. Now, it must be a pretty aggressive virus, this kind of thing, and kill the amount of people that it's done. But when you've got so many doctors coming out and speaking a completely different opinion, and especially people that come out with the NHS kind of thing, and spoke of their opinions on the virus, and especially the likes of Dr. Kaufman that goes into viruses and how it can't be transmitted the way it is, and the fact that COVID and a virus is within us already, it does make me question an awful lot of things. Now, obviously, I've got no sort of, I've got a master's in biology like yourself or anybody else out there kind of thing, but when to specialists, people on the BBC and the mainstream media, as opposed to the ones that have come out, you're left in a state of limbo. So the only thing you're actually left is what's going on in your own reality. And in my reality, my sisters have it and her family have it. So my sister has got 3 children, 2 of them have got asthma and 2 of them are on steroid inhalers. They all got it other than the 2 that are on steroid inhalers. So it's out there. Now, she describes it as nothing worse than a bad flu, but she has got less taste and smell that she's left with. So it is far more than a bad flu. So hopefully, today you can sort of kind of educate me, because I am stuck in limbo. And what my reality tells me is everybody's fine. It's a normal flu. Even when you look at the numbers of deaths and everything else, 51,000 died in the winter 2017 of flu. But we had no pandemic. We didn't have to walk around in face masks. The economy wasn't stopped. So these are the things that make me question it. So obviously you've seen the Dr. Kaufman videos when he talks about what a virus is and everything else. Maybe you can kind of use your skills to enlighten me in terms of opposed to what he's actually saying there and why that is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that one up. Well, I mean, we knew what points we were going to discuss. So obviously I have prepared something for that. But I said earlier on, I used the word misinformation, and there are people out there who are very articulate and have reputations in other fields, like Dr. Kaufman, who's a psychiatrist, psychologist, something like that.
Yep.
And it's very easy to sort of believe what they say when what they say is not necessarily accurate. So I'm going to give you Dr. Kaufman's sort of take on the virus and why it hasn't fulfilled what we call Koch's postulates, and I know I'm probably pronouncing that slightly wrong. Have you heard that argument before that that the virus can't be the cause of the disease because it hasn't fulfilled Koch's postulates? That tends to be Kaufman's main argument. Is that
right? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm just going to bring my PowerPoint, and I'll tell you why he says that and ultimately why he's wrong. But first of all, I'm going to give you an analogy. Now, that analogy won't take long, but it really is an analogy of what Kaufman is doing. I don't know if you've got a motorbike or not, but let's pretend you've got a motorbike and you take it to the garage for its MOT and it fails its MOT. And when you ask why it's failed its MOT, the mechanic comes out and says, well, it didn't have a spare tyre in the boot and the windscreen wipers weren't working. And he said, well, it's a motorbike, it doesn't have a spare tyre in the boot. And he says, no. And then he lists off a load of other things that are applicable to a car. And he's judging your motorbike on the criteria of a car. You'd think the guy didn't know what he was talking about. And that really is an analogy for what Kaufman is doing, and I'll show you why. Hopefully, you can now see, there'll be a slight delay, but you'll see a PowerPoint come up on my screen. Now, Koch's postulates are what Kaufman likes to talk about. Koch's postulates are a series of steps that allow us to prove that a pathogen is responsible for a particular disease. But what you've got to remember is Koch's postulates were not developed until, I think it was the 1890s, around about the turn of the 1900s. Way before viruses were ever discovered. And the idea of Koch's postulates is it will prove that a certain pathogen causes a disease. But when we look at Koch's postulates, Kaufman has a problem with this point here, that microorganisms are grown in a pure culture. Now, the thing about a virus is, which hadn't been discovered at the time, you can't grow a virus in a small culture. That's a characteristic of a virus. They need to reproduce inside cells, not wiping them on like a petri dish of agar and allowing them to grow on their own. And he also has a problem with this point here as well. Point number 5, how we properly identify the organism seems to have a problem with the genetic analysis for it. But if we go back to point number 2, no virus ever could possibly fulfill Koch's postulates because you cannot grow them in pure culture. Just like a motorbike could never pass an MOT that's meant for a car, but it doesn't mean that a motorbike can't be safe on the road. So we have to modify Koch's postulates, and you'll see in a second a blue slide coming up on the screen, and we have to modify it for viral diseases. So for example, here number 2, cultivation of a virus in host cells, which is what a virus needs. And we end up with something, the other alternatives, Rivers criteria is one of them. And we have shown that the coronavirus fulfills Rivers criteria. And remember, Rivers criteria is essentially Koch's postulates, but adapted for a virus for that second stage in terms of how that virus is cultivated. Here is the scientific... let me go back. Here is a scientific paper that you can go and read that for yourself, which shows how Koch's postulates have been fulfilled. And I'm showing you the abstract as well on that, tells you what the conclusion was. And we have an electron micrograph which was extracted from a monkey's feces and mucus after it had been injected with the virus. So if I take that off, the whole thing about Dr. Kaufman is that he's asking for the impossible. It's like me taking a motorbike, like I said, to a garage, and then when it fails the MOT for a car, me saying motorbikes don't exist. Motorbikes can't be used as a mode of transport. He really is that far off the scale in terms of any of his understanding. He really is that far out, you know. I don't know how much you'd... I'll just let you respond now anyway, because I've waffled for a bit, but I'll pass back to you.
Yeah, no, look, it's great. I mean, obviously, if you can stick it in the show notes as well, that presentation kind of thing, that gives me more information to take from this and go and research myself. Mm-hmm. But using Dr. Kaufman as an example, he is a specialist with far more knowledge than myself. He has a different viewpoint to you. But also there's a lot more doctors out there as well that come out and say exactly the same thing, or different versions of what doctor believes is true or fact kind of thing, you know, with a different take on it. So this is the confusion for me. Hence why I'm going back to my own reality, and everyone's fine.
Well, I've done plenty of these discussions and debates to know that at the end of this debate, neither of us are going to go away with a different mindset. I know that. You know, all I can do is, I'm sure at some point you'll watch this back, and I just hope when you watch it back that maybe you listen 2 or 3 times to the Cox Postulist point and think, well, maybe Kaufman isn't the man to sort of be listening to. I hope, but I know that's not going to happen now for sure. You did have some other points about the virus. What about just how virulent it could be? I don't know. You mentioned PCR to me and primers. Is there anything that you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at the PCR test that was invented by Kevin Mullis, was it? Back in the 1980s.
Yep.
The guy actually has come out and said the test don't actually work for COVID. So why are we using them? Okay.
So this is Kary Mullis that did invent PCR, the polymerase chain reaction, which is what we're using for genetic testing. I did research that because you sent me that. So there is a big story on the internet that Mullis has come out and said that it doesn't work for COVID. I'm just going to put my PowerPoint back on the screen. It should catch up with you in a second. Kary Mullis is dead, and he died before the outbreak, so he's not made any comments at all about COVID itself. But he did come up with a phrase that you should see on the screen in a second. He was quoted to say that PCR tests cannot detect free infectious viruses at all, right? And that has been taken out of context by some people to make them think that PCR is useless at detecting a viral infection. But actually, if you look at the quote itself, first of all, he didn't say that. This man here said it, John Lauritsen. And he was talking about PCR. And the quote is there, and I can send you this PowerPoint. I'm just going to take that off screen for a second. So that quote was said. But as that article shows, you can go back, you can pause it, you can read it or whatever. I can put it back on the screen if people want me to. What he meant was PCR is a qualitative technique. It's not quantitative. So if you've got a virus and I use PCR to replicate the desired genetic material inside you, I end up with a bunch of genetic material that tells me in no way, shape or form how many individual virus particles you had. It tells me that virus was inside you. It doesn't tell me how many. Just that you're infected. So when he's talking about, let's get that statement back up again. When he says specifically PCR tests cannot detect free infectious viruses, he means it's not detecting and counting individual viruses. It's taking the DNA from the virus you've got and just telling you that it's there, but it's not telling you any other information than that. So it's misquoted. And the guy who's it's been attributed to is dead before the outbreak started. So he definitely didn't say that. Pass that back to you.
Well, there's not only him, obviously. There's been a lot more doctors come out again saying exactly the same thing. You know, that the tests aren't good enough for this. And also we're getting a lot of inconsistencies with the test. We're getting people test positive. We're getting people test negative the next day and again positive again kind of thing, and vice versa. And then you've also got the likes of the Prime Minister of Tanzania that has a PhD in biology that's tested things like a pawpaw, a donkey, you know, and things like this, and didn't put his country into lockdown because of the knowledge that he had. So again, the what I can see from the PCR test results is they don't really add up either.
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned that. The thing is, the testing is inconsistent, and again, I'll just put some stuff up on the screen to show you why. Okay, just put this up for now. You can see in a second. If we had, the highest quality, gold standard, if you like, PCR testing kit for COVID-19, we will get extremely accurate results. Nothing's 100%, but we will get extremely accurate. Hopefully you can see the cost of that's on the screen at the minute. The cost of that is extremely expensive, and it's not something we can roll out on large scales. However, the reason that government, I'll put this back up in a second, the reason that governments are talking about testing and testing and testing and testing and testing is not all tests look for the same antigen, not all tests look for the same markers, etc. So if you're tested twice and each test has maybe a 70% chance of success, then actually, because you're being tested twice, that 70% and those tests looking for different things give you a much higher chance of having a proper result. Of having a correct result, sorry. And, obviously if you tested 3 times with something else, that gives you a much better chance. Now, I've got a paper here, I'll put this up on the screen for you, that looks at modelling this use of over-testing, if you like. And it kind of explains it, explains the maths of it really well, etc. There was something on here I wanted to show you, and it's not that. Sorry, I'll find the graph in a second. I think I've just got my slides ever so slightly out of order. There we go. Okay. So the paper that I just had the title up for, which I'm going to send you this presentation so you can see it. We've got 2 axes here, and I know you talked about having false positives and false negatives, didn't you? The test could go either way.
Yep.
Now, a false negative is far more likely than a false positive, meaning that we're underestimating the amount of people who've been infected. And the reason being, if I'm suddenly infected now, I'm not at my, the virus isn't shredding, if you like. It's not, spreading as quickly as it will be in 3 or 4 days' time. So if you're tested very early on, you've got a chance of failing. It's much higher chance of getting a false negative than a false positive. And this paper that I showed you has actually mapped the number of false positive and false negative tests it's got. Now, the false positives and negatives, they follow the same sort of pattern in days since the exposure to the virus. But you see, I don't know whether you can see it yet, this red line that's on the screen. Can you see that yet? Has it come up on your side?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
The y-axis on these graphs are different, which means, and I put that red line there because even the highest score on this false positive test here falls below that line. To give you some sort of indication, if you look at the y-axis, we've got very different numbers. To give you an indication that false negatives are just so massively more common than false positives, that if anything, the inaccuracies in any tests that have gone out have underestimated the infection, not overestimated the infection. Don't know what you think about that.
Well, I mean, from that statement, all you're confirming to me is that the tests aren't accurate. Either way, I mean, I'm not witness to the test. I don't do the test. I don't carry out the test, and I don't manufacture the test. So, all you're doing in my eyes is actually confirming the tests don't work either way. They're not 100%. So how can we have an actual reading on something that we don't know is correct or not?
So excellent question, and that's an issue, isn't it? When you get there's lots of issues that are going to be caused by a new pandemic. Something that's taken hold so quickly and spread. It's not realistic to think that you're going to have something 100% perfect in a very short amount of time. The tests are being developed as best as they can. They are being made as accurate as they can. We're being told to test and test and test again to increase the chances of getting a positive result. But the fact that they're not 100% positive doesn't mean that they're useless. For example, like a seatbelt. A seatbelt in a car isn't 100% going to save your life in a crash, but it's far from useless. And it's the same with the test. They are far from useless. If anything, they will err towards false negatives than false positives. So they're not 100%, but they are far from useless. That's what all the data is saying.
I see your point, but regards that, I wouldn't trust anything that I can't rely on. So if you can't rely on the test, then you've got to question the data.
Would that expand to like everything, or would it just be like, so like if I said how can I put it, if you were ill and someone had some medicine for you, for example, it was an antibiotic, but that antibiotic only worked maybe against 80% of bacteria. It was a broad spectrum antibiotic, and it wasn't guaranteed to help you, but it was 80%. Would you take the same approach to that, or would you take the antibiotic?
Well, the only result you could get from that is actually find out what the antibiotic is actually being targeted to use against, and then get that person to take the antibiotic and see if it works or not. That's how you get a true reflection of if the antibiotic's been successful or not. So it's quite hard to actually say before the event whether it's going to be effective or not, when you can actually prove it is by giving them the medication and checking that data.
Yeah, no, you're right. And but the point I'm making, not all medicines work 100% of the time for different. I can have one set of treatment that for a condition that someone else is getting exactly the same set of treatment. It might work for them. It might work for 10 other people, but I might be unfortunate and it might not work for me. Because nothing is guaranteed in medicine, and we all know that nothing is absolutely guaranteed. So I guess what I'm saying is, knowing that it's not guaranteed, the only way, would you just reject it because it's not 100%, or would you say, you know what, the stats are saying that it's better than nothing, and I'm going to use it?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you had, I get what you're saying, absolutely, kind of thing. One medication isn't going to be right for some people, but it might work for 90%, absolutely, kind of thing. But don't we then take that 10% of people it hasn't worked for and give them another drug to try?
Oh, too right, absolutely.
So we can find out the right drug for the right person, because we've all got different, inners, kind of thing. We've all got different illnesses and everything else and bacteria within us, kind of thing. So of course.
Yeah, no, I mean, you would keep trying. And I think the same with the tests that we've got now. The tests, they're not 100. I don't think anyone's going to tell you they've got 100% test, but and especially when we're trying to make them out and farm them out cheaply and quickly, the ones we're receiving, perhaps are slightly less accurate than they should be. But I'd still put that in the same category of having an antibiotic that you think doesn't work against everything, but you know what? It's the best we've got, and it's bloody good. But that's like I say, we could go on. Is there another topic you want to? Because I know you did mention a lot, and I don't want to hold too long on one point. Was there something else you wanted to talk about?
No. What? If you can sort of, obviously you're aware of Dr. Kaufman's theory on chromosome 8.
Yes, I am. Do you want to just explain what that is? And I'll get my to people, and I'll get the PowerPoint up.
Well, yeah. I'd rather you explain it, to be honest with you, because obviously you're the one with the degree in biology, not myself, kind of thing. I understand. I have a fair reflection on what Dr. Kaufman says about that, but it'd be nice to hear your point of view.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm just going to delete. Okay, so Dr. Kaufman, again, and I use the term misinformation. He's very articulate. He talked about Koch's postulates, but didn't understand Koch's postulates. And here he's talking about PCR, and he's not really understanding PCR. I'm going to get a picture on the screen for you. Right. First of all, are you familiar with what PCR is, or do you just want a rundown of that first? Are you happy with it?
No, you go through it, please. Go through it.
Okay, so PCR, polymerase chain reaction, is a way of taking a small amount of DNA, and then sometimes that DNA we can have, or genetic material, whatever, can be too small to do anything useful. So like too small an amount to do a test on, for example. So PCR is a way of making multiple copies very, very quickly that then gives us enough to do a test on. PCR itself isn't the test. And I think this is where, one of the places Kaufman has dropped. It's not the test, it's making enough of it so then we can go and test it. Now, I've got a graphic on the screen here, and for those people, hopefully you can see my mouse hovering over it. We take the DNA, which is here. We denature it with a little bit of heat, and I forget what else now, to be honest. And then we add things called primers that I've circled here in these blue, with these blue circles. These primers allow this final stage to happen here, where each strand is then copied. So we end up with 2 strands of DNA here, where we had 1, and then the process can repeat, and we double it, and very quickly we end up with loads of DNA. Now, what Kaufman is saying is, if I take, let's say, this primer here at the top, he's saying that has an identical matching 18 base sequence to somewhere in the human chromosome number 8. So if we had some human DNA in the sample we pick up, this primer here would match and copy the DNA from chromosome number 8. The problem is, this primer here at the top that I'm circling and this one here at the bottom have to be different primers because they flank the genetic material of that virus. They have to be different. So for him not to even realize that you need more than one type of primer, so therefore this wouldn't produce just copied human DNA is very odd. The second point, right, and there'll be 3 points I'm going to make, but the second point is he said that therefore we should get 100% positives because everybody's got, you know, this 18 base sequence in the DNA, but we're not getting 100% positives. So he was wrong with that. We're getting much lower. And the final point is, I've just forgotten. Oh, here we go. The final point is, if you've got viral DNA has a very different characteristic to human DNA. Viral DNA that inserts itself into a genome has long terminal repeats. It has a GAG gene, an EMV gene, a POL gene, all genes that do specific things to help a virus reproduce itself. Just going back to the car and the motorbike again, if I looked at a car and I said, oh, that's not real because it's got 4 wheels and not 2, and I was confusing a car and motorbike, you think I was an idiot. And again, with these virologists and these geneticists, they are not going to confuse very recognizable viral DNA with human DNA because they are completely different, like a car and a motorbike would be. I'll keep going back to that because it's a really good analogy. They are just completely different. You can't confuse the two. So again, it's Kaufman spreading misinformation because he doesn't know the processes and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's why you'll never hear him explain the processes, and you'll never hear him give scientific papers that back up what he's saying, because he is totally wrong by a really wide margin.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing the information. I'll look into it, definitely.
I know it's like a lot to take in because I had to have a refresher on PCR. I've not done that since I was teaching that years ago, so I know it's a lot to take in. But I'll pass it back to you because I don't want to hog the direction of the conversation. I think in terms of the virus, I think maybe we've covered that, and I know there are other things.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to go into now? Do you want to look at
facts and figures, vaccines, masks, anything you want?
I think, I mean, I'll tell you about my awakening, or the reason why I started looking into both sides of the argument was probably a lot of people in the truth community, as it were, saw a lot of flaws in 9/11. Now, I recall from that day, the BBC actually claimed that Building 7 had actually collapsed 20 minutes before it actually did. The reason why it was so prevalent to me at the time, I was actually working with somebody that actually had family working around the area. And we was actually, while this all unfolded throughout the day, we was actually looking at a map there live of buildings around that area, just to try and work out where they worked. So we knew what Building 7 looked like, and it was in the background of the reporter when she was making the report. So that's when I started to question the media. Mm-hmm. And then also, straight after that and everything that unfolded from that, I started to question the government when they started saying that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction therefore leading us to go to war. Obviously, X amount of million people died over that war, but then it made me question the government as well. So, do I question everything in the media? Absolutely. Do I question everything in the government? Absolutely. So when this actually broke out, I'd like to touch base on the advertising that the government put out regarding COVID, which was stay at home, protect the NHS.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Yeah.
Now, if we're in a pandemic, how I would approach advertising what this product is and everything else and trying to get on top of it is, A, telling people what the symptoms are. These are the initial symptoms. So these are the order of the symptoms in A, B, C, D, E, F. Also, I'll give a contact telephone number. Special COVID contact telephone number. These are the symptoms. Yes, stay in. Yes, protect the NHS. But your primary messages are, guys, these are the symptoms. This is a contact number. Then this is what we need to do to protect our immune system. We need to get more sunlight. We need to get more fruit and vegetables. We need to increase vitamin D. We need to increase vitamin C. We need to boost all these into our diet. But nothing was said. Nothing at all. No contact telephone number. No symptoms were released. There was nothing there. That would be the logical path of actually, if this what it was and I was scared as it was, you identify, you tell people what it is, you put out contact, but then also you educate people on how they can increase the immune system to prevent themselves getting this. And none of them things that happened. The only messages we got was stay at home and protect the NHS. So what's your thoughts on that?
I'll be honest. I do seem to remember that that we were constantly being told on the news what the symptoms were and to look out for them. I really vividly sort of remember seeing that a lot. And in terms of the contact helpline, I know that the NHS were urging people to phone. I forget what the number is now. The non-emergency number that we've got if you think you've got symptoms. So I do think those things were asked, but are you talking about right at the very beginning? Are you suggesting maybe there was like a slow response? Is that what you mean? Or
as soon as we went into lockdown, that was the only thing advertised, and that was the same advert running for 13 days. There was no special contact number. There was no symptoms. These are the symptoms. This is what you need to do if you get them, kind of thing. There was none of that. It was only stay at home and protect the NHS. Now, in terms of quarantining the virus and everything else kind of thing, then we live in an island nation. It should be very, very easy, to cut the borders. I mean, everything stopped anyway. The flights stopped happening and everything else kind of thing. So in terms of us sort of contaminating it, stopping potentials coming in, none of those actions actually took place. There was no testing at the borders. There was no tests on airplane people coming into it. These are really basic little bits of nuggets, which anybody in the right mind would actually come out and implement straight away. But we didn't. And there was no sign of sort of travel ever changing. So if it is a pandemic and they believe what it is and they took the actions to do what they did, surely those questions need to be raised on all this subject as well. Because, again, them elements don't add up to me.
Yeah, I remember at the time when we were being told to wash our hands and sing Happy Birthday, and I was looking around what other countries were doing. I remember thinking, why are we not taking this more seriously? Why are we not acting a little bit faster? And I think there were definite, valid questions to be asked about how that was handled to start with. How did we end up as an island with having the highest death toll in Europe? That shouldn't have happened. So, yeah, I don't think it was handled well. I think there was this idea of let's go for herd immunity, but we'll keep that quiet and we'll just let that go through the population. And when they realised that, oh shit, this isn't going to work out well for us, a herd immunity, there seemed to be a very instant change. For example, I'm a teacher and we were getting information from the government about schools, and we were being told schools aren't closing. Boris Johnson said it's not the time for schools to close. It's not the time. And then a week later, bang, we're shutting schools. And it was almost as if they realised that they had not handled it well. And so, you know, I'm quite happy, you know, I mean, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what policies I would have put in place, but I'm quite happy to agree that after this is all done, we need to look back and look at exactly how it was handled and learn from it. You know, we shouldn't have ended up with the highest death toll in Europe. We're an island. People weren't being checked even with a thermometer when they come through the airports, you're right, and they should have been. So, you know, I think I interpret that differently, but I do agree that wasn't the best strategy, definitely.
I just think there's a basic, very easy, understanding way to go about it. Kind of, any of those things were really put in place, kind of thing, you know. So again, that was just another little thing, kind of thing, which makes the jigsaw incomplete for me, kind of thing. But I mean, seamlessly moving on there, kind of thing. You say you're a teacher, kind of thing, within schools, kind of thing, and are you going back tomorrow or Friday or next week or?
Well, our schools. Oh, wait up! What's happened here? Have we gone off the air? Who sent a message? YouTube is not maintaining enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Some people in the chat will tell us whether we're on air or not. It'll all render. Apparently, it all renders out normal, even if it buffers. So we can carry on talking. It'll render out. Yeah, the schools here are going back on like a phased return. Most of them should, you know, be back now. And what they're doing is they're creating bubbles. So in secondary schools, Year 7 pupils are kept mixing with Year 7. Year 8 are kept mixing with Year 8. So as best as they can, they're creating these bubbles, and it's a logistical nightmare depending on the school, the shape of the building, the width of the corridors, even how big your dining room is. It's a logistical nightmare. But yeah, they are back. But I am so. Can I just expand on your point a little bit and talk about deaths? Because if we're saying that perhaps we didn't act fast enough, which I would agree with, then that would be shown in deaths and excess deaths, wouldn't it? Is there anything you want to bring up about deaths or deaths rate, or anything that you sent me you want me to show?
Yeah, I mean, regarding the death rate, as I said earlier, kind of, 51,000 people died of flu in the winter of 2017, according to the WHO in the UK. And we're seeing sort of similar numbers to that now, if the death rate was actually true. But obviously, one of the videos I sent you earlier, kind of thing, was a report there outside 10 Downing Street, kind of thing, where they openly admit the death rate isn't correct.
Do you want me to play that now?
So it actually. Yeah, if you could do that'd be great. Yeah.
Right. Someone give me I can't hear the audio for this video, and Joe won't be able to either. But if it loops around and carries on playing, could you just let me know in the chat that I've played it too long? It should only be on for about a minute. I think, Joe, if we carry on speaking, people will be able to hear us. So if we just shut up, and I'll let you know when the video's done. So here it goes.
Positive in February for coronavirus. You'd recovered, you'd been fine for the last few months, but then you'd been hit by a lorry or hit by a bus yesterday and died. Your death would still be added on to that coronavirus tally, even though clearly, even though you may have had it, clearly your death is nothing to do with coronavirus at all. So essentially what this means is that tally that we've been used to getting from the government every day when they are updating us on death figures is likely to be out, is likely to be too high, which means that 45,000 figure that we are currently looking at in terms of deaths from coronavirus is likely to be wrong. In terms of the actual count that Public Health England and the government rely on, well, that now looks to be inflated. So this urgent review has been ordered by the Health Secretary to basically try and sort out this issue and to try and establish actually by how much they have been overcounting their deaths. Hugely embarrassing. Of course, was basically if you had tested positive.
Oh, he just stopped. It didn't loop around. So they've just seen the video where the news reporter that was talking about death rates being overestimated. Now, when you sent me that link, I did a little bit of hunting, and I'm just going to play a video for everyone else, and then I'll just recap what everyone else has seen when we come back from the video, because I did notice a little bit of editing in that version. When I tracked it, it was on someone's Twitter account. It did look like it had been edited. And what I'm going to play now is bits that we didn't see. So I'm just going to click video 2 and then I'll let you know when we're done.
On death figures is likely to be out, is likely to be too high, which means that that 45,000 figure that we are currently looking at in terms of deaths from coronavirus is likely to be wrong. Now, this doesn't affect, when you're looking at excess deaths, a different way of counting deaths, and this doesn't affect the data that we get from the ONS. There's a couple of different sources of data for coronavirus deaths. The ONS figures are likely to still be accurate, but in terms of the actual count that Public Health England and the government rely on, well, that now looks to be inflated. So this.
Okay, that's stopped there. Hopefully, if I've played that right. I'm guessing you couldn't hear that.
No.
Have you seen the full clip unedited? Because I know you didn't edit it. I know it was a tweet that you sent me. So for anyone watching, I'm not suggesting Joe edited that at all. That wasn't Joe's doing. But have you seen it unedited?
I haven't, no. I'll have to obviously look at that later. But I get what you're saying, kind of thing. You know, if it has been edited, great. But when there's a CDC report only released a couple of days ago, kind of thing, that confirmed in the US that there's only 9,000 deaths of COVID, as opposed to the however many hundred of thousand they've had in the US, kind of thing. Again, when you put the two pieces together, kind of thing, again, something does it. Now, you can't really question the CDC report.
Well, that I'm just going to show you something in a second. So CDC, you're talking about data for the Centre for Disease Control, which I have, which I'll show you. But the bit that you just that video wasn't highly edited. They just chopped a huge bit out where they said that the data that was reporting excess deaths is accurate, and it was only one set of data that the government were making public on like a daily basis that was inaccurate, but the other data will be absolutely reliable. So the excess deaths, if I just bring this up, you should see here for Scotland, England and Wales. And before, is that graph on your screen yet?
Not yet.
Brilliant. So the yellow lines here, I mean, those numbers are quite small, I'm afraid, but the yellow lines, the yellow section of the bar there represents the excess deaths caused by, attributed to COVID-19. The grey bar is excess deaths not attributed to COVID-19. Now, one of the points a lot of people make about COVID-19 is everybody is, like in your video there, everybody is told on the death certificate you've died from COVID-19 because you've had it or whatever, etc. But when we actually look at the data, the excess deaths, a vast part of those are not from people who've previously been known to have COVID-19. And this links back to the false positives I was talking to you about, the false negatives I was talking to you about before, where those tests, if anything, under represent the amount of people who've been infected, because the amount of excess deaths there is pretty significant. And those are the deaths that the full news article says that we can actually rely on 100%. And if we look at them in graphical form, another graphical form, we can see here, just that dotted line being the average of all deaths for the time of year, and it's clear as a bell. And again, this is from the Office for National Statistics, so it's government data. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that. Hello?
Yeah. No, I've just popped up there.
Froze on there. Sorry, yeah.
There's a bit of a delay on it.
There's a bit of a delay. Sorry, Joe. So I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, the official statistics are showing a huge amount of excess deaths. And they are...
Well, I mean, I'll go and... yeah.
Sorry.
Well, that's the first time I've seen that data, but also I've seen a lot of data which says the weekly death count is exactly the same, like for like on it was this time last year, kind of thing, So again, kind of thing, we're looking at two different reports which give us two indications.
No, I know what you're looking at there.
Whether this could be real or not.
Yeah, when you talk about the weekly deaths at this time of year, I can't find where I've put it'll come to me later on, but there was a news report I've taken it from, and yeah, in fact, I'll just go back to this. So at this time of year now, if we look at obviously those excess deaths and how they're tailing off, because the lockdown has been effective, because the restrictions we've put in place have been effective, those numbers have tailed off and are getting back somewhere near normal. So they are now, they clearly have dropped now. So for this time of year, we are back to normal, absolutely 100%. But I would argue that's because we've been successful with the measures that have been put in place.
But the sort of flow of deaths here that you're seeing, you'd actually see every year that you had a relatively harsh flu. Exactly the same pattern you would see on that sort of graph, because again, it comes in the winter, and it goes into the spring and it's gone by the summer.
No, if I show you this again from the same source, if you look at and I know there's a bit of a delay before it comes up onto you. This is the graph at the bottom. Now, people have said for a long time, there's more deaths from the flu than there are from COVID, etc. And this is where they got it from. So this blue line here is deaths from the flu. And the dotted blue line are like the average deaths from the flu. And obviously we can see, even into lockdown, the deaths from COVID-19 are nowhere near the deaths from the flu. Nowhere near. But obviously we knew what was coming because, we understand viruses, transmissions, how they spread. And then here, where it peaks up, this red line, where it shoots up, that just shows you how significantly higher the COVID deaths are than the flu deaths for that season. So, and then, yes, they've tailed off lower again and are now weekly lower than the flu because of the restrictions were put in place. But they were significantly higher until they were dealt with by the lockdown.
So that's obviously taken on an average over the last 5 years.
No, that's this.
It's not like it.
That's That's the 3rd of January until today on a week by week point. So it's basically this outbreak.
No, when.
Oh, the average. Sorry, you mean the average was.
Yeah. So the average is taken over the last 5 years again. So as I said earlier, the winter flu of 2017 kind of thing, the average, because it was so high, that would look completely different against the average you got there. So again, why don't we take that data of 2017 when we had a similar amount of deaths with flu influenza that we have with COVID, and actually compare them two together?
I honestly don't think. Unless you've seen sort of like a source that gives you the number of deaths in that flu season, I think that's a fact that you've got from someone like Kaufman, etc. And that's why I'm using this term, sort of like misinformation. But where's that number come from? Like, what are you citing for that?
I haven't got it to hand, but that is official figures. That is 51,000. I think it was 51,087 to be precise that I saw. But I have got a document that actually proves that. So again, and I'm sure that pattern would have resembled some of that we're actually seeing against the COVID as well, in terms of it's seasonal. So you're going to get that spike and you're going to get that slow come down.
The excess deaths as well, would you say it matched the excess death? I mean, obviously, if you've got a particularly bad flu or something, I'm sure some years are going to be worse than the others, and as it spreads, you are going to get the shape. You're going to get a little, a similar sort of peak of that, or multiple peaks. But when you add up the excess deaths and you do this, I really don't think that there's any evidence out there that the excess deaths, due to a bad recent seasonal flu, or anything like what we're seeing here for COVID-19. I'll look at the data, but unless someone in the chat can look that up for us.
No. I mean, please do. I'll send you the report I've got, kind of thing, after this kind of thing. But there was 51,000 deaths in the UK. So, but again, whether that was solely down to influenza or whether that was because of complication of, heart disease and, respiratory problems kind of thing, COPD kind of thing. Again, there was no breakdown of that data. Same as is there's not really in the COVID kind of thing, how many people have actually just died of COVID or how many people died with other illnesses. It's the same with the information I shared with you regarding the average age of death of COVID compared to the average age of death throughout the world. You're looking at that, you're likely to live longer if you've got COVID, so then if you don't have it. So,
well, the average, the average statistics can say a lot of things. The average age of death is lower than the average. So the average life expectancy, you're saying, is lower than the average age of someone who's died from COVID. It's but I think do you honestly think that do you honestly think that the people who have died from COVID would have died at the same time had they not had it?
That's a great question, but again, that's the same question that would have happened in 2017 with the 51,000 deaths. So again, of course, it may be a factor, it may be a small factor, it may be a large factor kind of thing. Who knows kind of thing. The fact of the matter is we had those deaths there kind of thing. And we supposedly got them now, hopefully. But again.
While we were talking then, I did just do a quick Google. I'm not saying that Google's going to answer all my questions. And you are right that in 2017, in the winter season, 50,100 people died from the flu. Right. But I'm going to try and put that in a little bit of context for what we're talking about and why a lockdown was necessary and why it did so well for us. I mean, firstly, when that 50,000 people died of a flu in the 2017-18 season, there were no measures in place, national measures in place to stop the spread of the flu. So that was as bad as the flu was going to get because we didn't really put measures in place to stop it. With the COVID-19, we have put serious measures in place to stop it, and we are still at that. I mean, I forget what the total is. Maybe someone can Google it and tell me now, but we've got to be past 50,000 now, and if not, we very, very soon will be, and that's with all the measures in place to stop it. I'm just going to put something on the screen for you. What are your thoughts on Sweden and then not engaging in the lockdown? Because that'll be interesting to see how they did. What are your thoughts on Sweden? Because they're doing, I suppose, Sweden, what you would advocate here.
Well, if you look at the amount of deaths that they're reporting, kind of thing, it's probably greater per 100,000 than it is here.
Well, they have a slightly higher death rate at the minute than the UK, and I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, they didn't go into lockdown; it's not that much different." I'm just going to show you. Again, I do appreciate it takes a while to come up on your side of the screen. But this is the data for Sweden, and you will see that obviously in March it started to pick up. And it was around about here where I'm hovering my mouse now that people were questioning Sweden's not going into lockdown, if you like. And around about here, a lot of people were saying, oh, aren't Sweden doing an effective job? But then look what happens around about the end of May. Because we've suddenly got that critical number of people who are infected, and the whole thing starts to take off. Now, if I was to compare Sweden with the UK, I could do that. But I think what's more fair is to compare Sweden with Norway, Finland, and Denmark. Hopefully, you can see the map has come on the screen, because obviously those countries are going to be much more similar. It's going to be a much fairer comparison than comparing Sweden with the UK. Would that make sense?
Yep.
Hopefully you can see the map. So let's do that. And obviously the other countries didn't take Sweden's path. And when we have a look at how Sweden did against Denmark, Norway and Finland, when you see that graph, I don't think I need to tell you which one's Sweden. And these are deaths per million people. They fared horrifically bad compared to their neighbours. Whereas, because they took such a different approach. Whereas if we look at how England compared with Scotland and Wales, we can see that the trends are actually all very similar. We all took the same approach, And sorry, we've talked about the excess deaths again, similar trends. We all took the same approach, and we've not had anything like this. So that tells me, that screams at me that Sweden made the wrong decision, unless you want to talk about the economy, and their economy suffered less, marginally less, because they made that decision.
Well,
so
yeah. And that's something we do need to bear in mind, kind of thing. Obviously, we are going off on a tangent on the actual numbers, kind of thing. But again, all of these things need to be sort of spoken out. But yes, their economy has fared a lot better than ours has, kind of thing. And even if you look at that, I mean, who knows how many millions of jobs are going to go by the time furlough finishes and everything else. But it wouldn't surprise me if at least 5 to 10 million jobs went.
It's going to be horrific.
UK. You know,
it's going to be horrific, and it will take years to get over. Yeah.
So
what's
the knock-on effects of that? You know, kind of thing. You've got people going in poverty. You've got children going into the poverty bracket, kind of thing again, which is going to, you know, make sure they're going to be iller and less nutrition further down the line. You've got families going into huge amounts of debts, let alone the country. I mean, the country's gone into massive debts, where the knock-on effect with our children's children will be paying that debt back. You know, so again, you know, look at this. Sweden might be like this now, but you take a 20-year, because it's probably going to take 20 to 30 years to get back on an even keel or anywhere near to pay our debts back that we've had to borrow, kind of thing. I think you see a very different sort of outline then. But again, we're talking about things that could or may not happen in the future, kind of thing. So yeah, it's hard to say that kind of thing. But one thing is guaranteed: our children's children will be paying a hell of a lot more tax than we ever did growing up.
I think it'll affect things. I mean, I'm no expert on economy or anything like that, but I think it will be worse than it was when the banks all screwed us over. And it is horrendous, but I don't know. Do you go for, let's put this on the screen for the benefit of those watching, but like, do you go for this? Do you go for the extra deaths in favour of, in favour of only an 8% reduction in your economy, as opposed to someone else who might have 12 or 13? You know, there's a slight growth even in this period. Or do you say, well, actually, no, the lives of our grandparents are far more important? I know which way I'd go, but I do understand, and I'll totally accept that the economy will be paying for this for a long time. But that's for someone more educated in politics and money than me to talk about, because it's certainly not my field at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, but even if you look at, I mean, going back to the numbers of deaths and things like this, if you look at who's got the most draconian measures on its people at the moment, and that's probably Australia. And some of the videos you're seeing from Australia, kind of thing, where police are just going, taking people and children away from kind of thing, from standing out on the street, kind of thing, you know, and the lockdown measures they've got there. I mean, what's the death in Australia today? 645 people. I think it's 645 as of today, kind of thing. So again, kind of thing, you know, when you're comparing countries against each other, kind of thing, and then what they're implementing and how long they carry on lockdowns and things like this kind of thing, and what they're doing to carry on that social destruction of society, then again, nothing adds up, because nothing is relatable from one country to the other. Sweden's to Norway's, as to Australia, kind of thing, you know. And these are the things that really make people question things. 645 deaths and people aren't still going back to work, and you know, it's just wow. You know, please, you know, where's the sense in these actions?
Yeah, I mean, like the last thing I would do is even hint that I could have a debate on what the correct policy should be economically, or because I just, you know, I'm just not the person to do it. I just don't know. So, but there are a lot of problems. But what I think my personal issue is people who are out there spreading misinformation about, you know, the virus isn't the cause of the disease, or actually the death rates aren't as high as people are saying, or, you know, information that's demonstrably wrong, like what Kaufman is saying. Because, I mean, you come across as an extremely polite person, and you have done since I contacted you, and all the emails we've shared. You've been extremely polite tonight. You know, you're obviously looking into things. You're very articulate. And it kind of frustrates me a little bit that someone like Kaufman could just literally make stuff up, which is what he's doing. He's making stuff up about Koch's postulates he doesn't understand. He's making stuff up about the primers and chromosome 8. But that information is affecting good people like yourself, because obviously biology is not your background, and you can't see that he's comparing cars to motorbikes, and that's the bit that frustrates me, because it's a lot of research and a lot of work for you to do, to go start looking at genetics and DNA replication and then Koch's postulate. You'd be at it forever. So I don't know, it just annoys me that he's saying stuff and people like yourself are accepting it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I've only used Dr. Kaufman as an example kind of thing. There's a hell of a lot more doctors that have come out kind of thing. And even in the UK, you got, Dr. Rashid Bashir kind of thing that came out kind of thing. There's loads of people that are coming forward now kind of thing, backing up all slightly different theories to Dr. Kaufman. But again, for the normal person like me kind of thing, I don't understand I haven't got the knowledge, I haven't studied all this kind of thing. But there is an awful lot of doctors kind of thing, which are coming out kind of thing. Dr. Sherry kind of thing came out. She's wonderful, and it does a lot of work in exposing HIV and things like that kind of thing. It's not just Dr. Kaufman. There's an awful lot, and it is confusing. So, as I said earlier, kind of thing, when you've got two conflicted opinions, and I absolutely respect everything that you've shown me tonight, and I will look into it further, no doubt about that. When you can see two sides of the arguments and it doesn't add up, then you have to look out your own window and accept reality kind of thing. Is there a pandemic out there? No, there's not. But then you look in.
Sorry, go on.
I think again, going back to death rates and whether they're fraudulent, whether they're not, anything like that. I know people up in the northeast kind of thing where they had dying relatives. I was in homes kind of thing. They didn't die because, in the northeast, we had a lot of people coming out of hospitals and going into the homes, and they had COVID. Also, that was the massive loss of life which we unfortunately got within care homes kind of thing, But we've got old people up there as well that their families know they didn't have COVID kind of thing, and they couldn't have done it. They didn't come in contact with anybody. Yet when they've got the report back and people are telling them, oh, actually, kind of thing, we put COVID on the death certificate as well, kind of thing, when they categorically didn't know they had it, kind of thing. Where do all those people stand? What's your viewpoints on that kind of thing? Because there's thousands of people which are actually sort of defending the rights of their parents or grandparents that died. Have been labelled with this COVID.
Yeah, I agree.
So again,
Oh, sorry. No, I've interrupted you again. Go on.
No, go on.
Well, I agree. Like, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? But it's so unprecedented and difficult to deal with, this situation, that if somebody has got COVID-19, for example, and they die from, there will be a small number of people out there who've had COVID-19 and died from something else and had that on the certificate. But equally, I think for the majority of people who have underlying conditions, or they're old, they're frail, they're doing fine with that for now, but then they get COVID-19 and a couple of weeks later they're dead. I don't think it's unfair to say that COVID-19 has then played a massive role in their death, because if they hadn't had it, they would have carried on with those underlying conditions. And that's why I said to you before, how much longer do you think they would have lived without getting COVID-19? And if the answer is they'd have died at the same time, then we've got to explain this huge amount of excess deaths with no apparent cause, and really the cause is COVID-19. But I agree, if it was a member of my family and I thought something was wrong on that death certificate, I'd be really, really upset. It's unprecedented and it's difficult to deal with, and there are going to be things that slip through the net, there are going to be errors, and it's horrendous for all the people involved. But I don't think it's deliberate, if that makes sense. You
don't think they're just being labelled COVID on the death certificate with no reason, with no test, or explain why you don't think it's deliberate.
I think if somebody's been tested for COVID-19 and they have it and they die because maybe they've got a heart problem or a respiratory problem, and that respiratory problem then kills them, I understand the difference, but I understand that it might be the heart attack that's killed them or the respiratory problem. But what I'm saying is, if they've had that condition and then COVID has come along, it's inflamed that condition, in a very short amount of time, so that condition then kills them. So I don't think that's wrong, because the COVID has aggravated and caused the death through, whatever underlying illness there was. Without that COVID coming along, they would have carried on ticking on and survived. Like I said, which is why I asked you before, if they didn't have COVID, how much longer do you think they would have lived? And I think it aggravates the conditions and kills them. So it's fine for it to be on the death certificate if it's been a part of the death, even if it's not been like the final straw. The final straw might have been the heart attack or the asthma attack. But if that's been brought on by COVID-19, we need to be aware of that.
But that's something you can't prove one way or the other, isn't it? And that's one of the difficulties of these kind of thing. You can't prove that COVID did actually kill them, or the heart disease killed them, or anything else kind of thing. But they are being labelled with that.
You can't prove it for every individual. You cannot. What you can do though is look at the situation and say, well, what are the odds? And you look at the spike in these deaths, and you look at how the lockdown and stopping the spread of the virus has brought it down, and you accept that, look, COVID-19 is here, it is causing a huge amount of deaths. It's very likely that someone who's old and asthmatic with a weak heart, if they die a week after getting COVID-19, it's been aggravated by COVID-19, and that goes on the certificate. But no, you can't prove 100% that the COVID-19 is what did that, but that doesn't mean, that's a million miles away from saying people are just, it's being made up and the COVID-19 is having no effect and it's not the cause of anything and there's no pandemic. It's a very different, they're two very different things, in my opinion.
But yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
I mean, someone in the chat actually has put a really good point. I mean, AIDS doesn't kill anybody. AIDS removes your immune system to the point where a common cold will develop into pneumonia and kill you. AIDS doesn't, if you had AIDS but you lived in a sterile bubble, you'd live out your life normally. But we still say people die from AIDS, even though it's not the AIDS that kills you. It's the, it's the cold that you get afterwards, or the infection you get afterwards. When you cut your finger on a piece of paper, and I think that's the kind of thing we're talking about here, really. Hopefully that makes more sense if I put it that way.
Yeah, so it's... Yeah, no, absolutely. And, that's... I mean, AIDS is a completely different subject with, an awful lot of questions to be asked about its origins and everything else like that, because you believe that, what he said about how it generated kind of happened. But your point about sort of people dying with AIDS and everything else like that is, well, yeah, but a lot of people that have AIDS also work an awful lot of boosting their immune system up to fight against, flus and everything else kind of thing. So again, which alludes to the point earlier that I made kind of thing, where was the information about trying to keep up people's immune systems kind of thing, because that's imperative for people with HIV. They need a strong immune system kind of thing, but same with elderly and flu kind of thing, so again, shouldn't that be the message at the start?
Well, I think when you've got, I think it's always a good message to have a strong immune system, but it's not possible for a strong immune system to make you immune to something when you've not been exposed to the antigens for it. Having a strong immune system will not stop you getting COVID-19. If you've got a healthy immune system, you're making your immune system work the best it can. But the way it works is, once you're introduced to a pathogen, you're exposed to its antigens, then you trigger that immune response, and your immune response means that, once you've got over that, next time you can fight it again. But if, this COVID-19 is new, it's different. Nobody has any natural antigens. So you could have the strongest immune system in the world, but, you're still going to have an immune response when COVID-19 comes into your body. You're still going to have that period of time where your body's got to figure out, well, what are the correct antibodies to make. You can't make yourself immune to a disease in that way. You have to be exposed to it first, or through a vaccine.
Yeah, but if you've got a very pure immune system, you're more likely to get COVID than having a very strong immune system.
You're more likely to be badly affected by it, for sure. Yeah. You're more like... Sorry, I read what you said the wrong way around. I was reading you saying that if you build up your immune system, then you're going to be almost like immune to it. I read that the wrong way around. You are right, of course. If you've got a stronger immune system, you are... Yeah, I am absolutely positive you're going to react quicker. You're going to react better to that infection. You know, and I think that's great. But in terms of all the advice the government could have been giving out, and stressing is really important, I think, you know, yeah, the washing your hands, the social distancing, all of that trumps changing your diet, you know, to get your immune system up a little bit. You know, that's like the icing on the cake when we're dealing with something like this. You know, to stop the pandemic, the bigger advice was the advice that they eventually dished out. And I'm not saying they got every little thing right, but I think that's the bigger picture.
I appreciate we've gone massively off script. So if you want to bring it back to the script and see where, not that I've enjoyed this natural conversation, it's been great.
It's been great. I know you wanted to talk about vaccines and masks.
The mask.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. I really am sorry to, and I'll never interrupt again. It's just I've had that much orange juice to drink. I need a pee. What I'll do is I'll put you on standby so you don't have to entertain the crowd, and everyone else. I'll be back in a minute, and then we'll talk about vaccines and masks. So I'm going to put you back to the standby card. Anything you say, Joe, might be broadcast, so just be aware of that. And I'll be back in about 30 seconds. And it's just me. Is he gone? Hello? Can anyone hear me? I don't know what's... It's just me. That's confused me. Right. I'll try and get him back. I'm going to go back on standby and I'll try and get him back.
Hello.
There we go. So I think, I don't know what happened then, but you're back. You're back. Right. I've just got to find the thingamajig. Right. Okay, we're back. Can I hear you?
Everything's good?
Everything's good, right. There we go. That's my technical triumph for the night. I went for a wee and somehow managed to kick you out the Zoom call. But you're back. So, where did you want to go with? Because we've got 40 minutes, and I know we've got some questions. For what we'll do with the questions this time, if you just tag me in the chat.
Yeah.
Normally it's me and Creaky, and he's not here at the minute, so I can't run the poll. But when we get to questions, just tag us in the chat, and I'll read them out. Sorry, Joe. what did you want to go to? What did you want to masks or vaccines, wasn't it?
Yeah, let's start on masks. I mean, my thoughts on masks are to what I believe. Now, I haven't seen them all, but allegedly there's over 8,000 documents produced by 98 different countries that state that the wearing of masks do three main things which lowers your immune system. That is, rebreathing in the carbon dioxide which circulates behind the mask that's not expelled properly, your decreased natural flow of oxygen that you're breathing in, but also as well the fear, which lowers your immune system as well. So now there's also masks which you can purchase today, kind of thing, out in the shops, which actually state on them does not protect you or anybody else from COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So I've looked at actual science that talks about the size of the holes in the mask compared to the size of the virus itself. Yep. Which again doesn't really do a lot in terms of protection kind of thing. So if we look at the mask, we've got something which is proven to lower your immune system massively, especially within children, will have massively mental health problems to a certain type of people moving down further down the line. Without doubt, kind of thing. I mean, mental health within children is something which is skyrocketing up, day by day, kind of thing. It's horrendous what's happening. Suicide rate is up 200%, kind of thing as well. So all these things, kind of thing, are very sort of degrading for society. But it holds actually no scientific proof that the masks actually do anything to stop COVID if it is a thing anyway. Spreading or to protect yourself. So as far as I can see, I mean, I don't wear a mask at all, kind of thing, and I won't. From what I've seen of a supermarket's data, I mean, it varies massively geographically where you are in the country, but about 94% of people are wearing masks, which doesn't actually do anything to protect you against COVID, and actually does negative things towards your immune system as well, and destroys society because you're not. So where is the advantages of wearing a mask? Because to me it seems absolutely pointless. And again, if we are talking about a second spike of COVID, if we are talking about the winter flu which is coming, then where does that leave us, kind of thing? Where's the scientific proof? Where's the data that actually masks do anything? Because when the mask manufacturers are sticking does not work for COVID on the size of the box, then they're absolutely pointless.
Okay, I will definitely address that. I do very quickly want to address one other point you made as well about masks doing us harm, but I would definitely give you data and I'll explain that point, and if I don't, remind me and I'll come back to it. I'm just going to put put the PowerPoint back on the screen. The first thing about masks that get... Oh, that's not on the screen, is it? I've somehow gone into studio mode.
Cat door talking.
I haven't got a clue. Right, hopefully that should be on the screen now. Yeah. So I've gone into the wrong mode here. Give me a second. I don't know what I'm doing. If I click that... Oh, and there we go. Fine. Right. So a lot of people have been talking about masks and the reputed dangers of masks, But I've got to ask, all the people now who are being asked to wear a mask seem concerned about it, but why have these same concerns not been made over decades and decades and decades for people like this woman in the top left who works in a factory, like I did when I was at university? I worked in a factory. I was on machinery, buffing stuff, lots of sawdust in the air, etc. I had to wear a mask all the time, not just for 1 hour when I was in a shop, my 1 hour a week when I was shopping. I had to wear them all the time. We've got surgeons over here who are wearing masks for like 6 hour long operations. Nobody I can think of in the history of time has ever been campaigning so surgeons don't have to wear masks because of the negative effects of carbon dioxide. We've got welders and people like that, who've constantly got to wear this protective face gear. And again, nobody's ever screamed out and said these people are going to suffer from carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide poisoning. People in China over here have been wearing masks all, to combat pollution for ages. So I just want to, before I get to the data and how masks go on. Before I get to the data and tell you why masks do help with viruses, I know in all those situations they're wearing masks for a reason, okay? But why have we never ever heard of factory workers complaining about carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide poisoning from the mask? Why have we never heard surgeons do it? Why have we never had studies on welders that are wearing face masks all day, or firemen? Or why has this only come out now? And why is it only deemed to be harmful now, when for decades and decades and decades nobody's really cared about it?
Yeah, no, I see the point kind of thing, but as I said kind of thing, I haven't got any to hand kind of thing, but if you Google around, you'll find lots of papers that actually state that, rebreathing your carbon dioxide and, a restricted airflow kind of thing does, prevent your immune system being where it should be kind of thing. There's also lots of clips on YouTube where they've got, where they test in the oxygen and the air breathing. I can't remember who did it now, but the doctor did to his own child kind of thing, and they was testing the amount of oxygen intake they was taking kind of thing, and straight away kind of thing went into some sort of danger scale kind of thing, which, fair enough, these, and again, like you say kind of thing, surgeons use them to stop things dropping out the mouth kind of thing and things like this. And lots of surgeons have come forward and said that, and Vernon Coleman, who is excellent kind of thing, will say exactly the same thing as well. But again, I don't want to focus on they're okay kind of thing. What I want is I want to see proof that they are effective in stopping COVID kind of thing. Because you said there kind of thing, no one's well. Apparently 3 weeks ago, 2 people in, I think it was China or Taiwan, 2 kids wearing face masks doing sports kind of thing, dropped down dead after running around a track for 1,500 meters kind of thing, So again, there's a lot of conflicting, evidence for and against,
Yeah.
But when I actually look at the scientific papers which are available everywhere online kind of thing, it does state that these are all harming. They're all harmful to your immune system kind of thing, And I'm a great lover of natural science that can be recorded and observed and repeated kind of thing, And a lot of these scientific papers are following that scientific method.
So okay, let's get to how they do protect COVID, and I just want to point out 2 things people have said in the chat, which I think are valid points, and then we'll get on to what you said. Somebody pointed out like a bit of an irony. With some people claiming that a mask won't stop a virus, but it will stop carbon dioxide from getting out, when carbon dioxide is millions and millions of times smaller than a virus. So if it's going to stop a virus getting out, I think what they're saying is, if it's going to let carbon dioxide, let me start again. If it's going to stop carbon dioxide from getting out, it's going to stop a virus from getting out, given the fact that carbon dioxide molecules are millions of times smaller than a virus. So it's a good point, but I don't think you can have it both ways with that. You can't say they're useless against viruses, which are this big, but they're brilliant against carbon dioxide, which is this big. And what somebody else pointed out, Team Skeptic is a channel on YouTube. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He actually did a live stream for quite a significant amount of time, and he attached himself live to a pulse oximeter, and he put a mask on and monitored to try and sort of like debunk that claim, monitored his blood oxygen levels, and it was fine. But that's not the question you asked. The question you asked was, where is the evidence that they work against COVID-19? So let me bring this up. Hopefully you'll see in a second. I've got 2 papers here, and I forget which way around I've put them, so apologies if it's not the first paper. But here is a paper that is looking at the effectiveness of surgical masks against like influenza, so basically viruses in droplets. Okay, and you are right. The very first line of that paper, which I've highlighted because I think a lot of people against masks say this. Most surgical masks are not certified for use as a respiratory protective device. And that's the warning you were talking about, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Just in the same way that a seatbelt isn't guaranteed to stop you dying in a car crash, a mask is not 100% guaranteed to stop COVID-19. But this isn't about guaranteeing 100%, because if we had something that guaranteed 100%, we would use it. The very same paper that has made this comment, which a lot of people who are against masks quote, then goes on to outline the method, which I know there's a bit of a delay on your screen, but it tells you the method of how they used a dummy and a breathing simulator and how they measured the amount of virus, etc. Again, I'll leave it on screen so you can read, but the conclusion, the findings were that the mask caused reductions in the amount of virus in the air anywhere between 1.1 to 55 fold, an average of 6-fold reduction in the amount of virus in the air. Now, that's only my first paper. I'll put the second one in a second. But essentially what a lot of people will tell you when you say, you know, what is the proof that masks protect you from COVID-19? It's about reducing. It's about reducing what you breathe out, not what you breathe in. It's about reducing what you breathe out to a rate where there's that much less virus out there that the R0 value drops and it spreads a lot quicker. It's never about 100%. It's about reducing. If I put the thing back on, another paper. Now, there's some hard data in here for you. This is about virus shedding. Now, virus shedding is essentially when you start secreting or breathing out a virus once you've been infected. And this has studied the effect of masks on coronavirus, influenza, and rhinoviruses. And what you really want to look at is this here. And I know it's not very big on the screen, but let me know when you've got those weird graphs on the screen. Those graphs should come up soon. Are they up yet? There might be a bit of a lag.
Nope.
Okay, no. So these green ones here at the very top, it'll say coronavirus. This is coronavirus and how much essentially was passed out through the mask, if you want to put it that way. On the left-hand side at the top, on this little chart here where the green dots are, we can see that without a mask, we have coronavirus shedding out into the air. If we go over to the right-hand side, in fact, what I'll do is I'll put these dots on if I can. There we go. If we look on the right-hand side, and all of these three on the right-hand side are against with a mask for all viruses, we can see that with a mask, scientifically proven, we have less virus escaping the mask into the air, so escaping into the air or shedding into the air if you are wearing a mask. Now, there are lots and lots and lots and lots of papers. I've done a video on masks before. This is a different video than I used in a different paper than I used in the videos I've done before. Deliberately, I didn't want people thinking I was misusing stuff. But I've got about 8 of these. You know, and I'll go back to the seatbelt analogy. That they're not there to be 100%. And neither is a seatbelt, but you wouldn't think of driving down the motorway without a seatbelt on and expect to get out of a crash alive. So there's your hard data, there's your scientific evidence.
I'll have a look at that. It still hasn't come up on my screen.
What's on your screen at the minute? The graphs with the dots?
No, I haven't seen any graph at all. It's just me and you. So.
Oh shit! Has that been for all that time?
Yeah, I haven't seen the last one.
Oh crap! Right, I don't think I had it. What about now? Can you see anything coming up on the screen?
I know. I think we may be quite far behind on the lag. I think, to be honest with you.
Oh man. Oh no. Right, let's see. No one in the chat is saying can't see. Are you looking at the Zoom feed and not the watch page? Because if you look
I'm
at Zoom,
looking
you
at the
won't
watch
see
page.
it.
No, I'm looking at the watch page.
Right. If someone could tell me in the chat whether my graphs and stuff appeared on the watch page, that would be really, really useful. Some super chats coming, but I will read those out as the questions in about 10 minutes. So there we go. Right. The last thing you wanted to talk about was vaccines, wasn't it? And if we do maybe 10 minutes on vaccines, and then we'll take the questions from the chat. We'll be done by 9 o'clock. Oh, Doctor Who says he saw it. Yeah, they say they can see it. It must be. I bet you might just have the Zoom image on. Or it could have been a delay. So what is it
it's come up now. Oh no.
God, it's come up now on you. Blind.
I'm looking. No, I'm looking at Sweden there.
Oh God, you are. Did you pause the video by any chance a while ago? No, I don't know what's going on.
No, it's showing us live, but.
We'll do vaccines. 10 minutes on vaccines. Tell us what you think. I'll give you what I think, and then we'll answer the questions and bid each other a good farewell.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So vaccines. Okay. So if you look at what science tells us about vaccine development, a lot of vaccines which have been passed for use now. I've actually had sort of 10 to 15 years worth of testing before it's been released for fit to people to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yet for some reason they're willing to rush this through as soon as possible. But what's your take on that?
Okay, my take on that is, if I can find my page here, I'm going to bring something up. Now, I'm going to read it out to you because I know you've got a massive lag there and you're not going to be able to see it. So for anyone who's watching in the chat, I'm not reading this out because I think you can't read it. Okay. This is taken from 2009 and it's a World Health Organization article. And it's talking about an influenza vaccine. And what it says is it takes approximately 5 to 6 months for the first supplies of an approved vaccine to become available once a new strain of influenza virus with pandemic potential is identified and isolated. Not 10 to 15 years. Now, I know you sent me the website, and I understand why you've said that, and that is because if we had a brand new virus nobody had seen before, we had no experience of it whatsoever, then it could take with proper testing all of that time. It could take years and years and years and years and years. But if we have a virus which is a variation of another virus, so for example, we know this is a coronavirus, it's a variation of something else. It has got pandemic potential, clearly. Then, a couple of steps are missed, but we're not building a vaccine from scratch. We're building it on a variation of a coronavirus, and we understand coronaviruses. So just like I showed you with, hopefully you can see on the screen now, that influenza vaccine, it doesn't always take 10, 15 years. It's regular, year in, year out, for these influenza vaccines to be 5 or 6 months in the making before they're ready. And that's just the way it is, really, with those.
So how do you explain? Let's have a look. I mean, look, there's lots of chat about what this really is about, kind of thing, in terms of depopulation and everything else like that kind of thing. But who knows? But if you look at let's say Bill Gates' work that he's done in Africa and done in India,
yeah,
where he's rushed a vaccine out, and we've got reported, and there's families' testimonials, there's mother and father's testimonials about the reactions that people have had from these vaccines being rushed out. Some of the figures are claiming 600,000 and 700,000. People are now left with deficiencies, kind of thing, in some way, and that can be it's 185,000 are now saying they are infertile because of it. Where it's a test for something completely different. Now, again, these are vaccines which have been rushed out, and you've got, I mean, I'm not a scientist. I haven't tested any of these kids, kind of thing. I'm only repeating statements that have been, affected by this, kind of thing. You seem to have his vaccines rolled out to try and cure one thing, and ends up destroying something else. Now, also, when you look at vaccine manufacturers, they're not liable either for any harm or damage, kind of thing. And all those, what's the UK government paid out £7 billion last year to victims of vaccines? £7 billion we're paying out, kind of thing, to people that have had bad reactions to taking a vaccine which has been deemed safe and for public to use, And there's hundreds of people within the UK which have all got lots of YouTube channels, kind of thing, which have had their kids vaccinated and, found out that the problems that their child has had is because of this vaccine, kind of thing. And you can't deny that, kind of thing. Those people are there, kind of thing. So vaccines aren't a safe process at all, in my eyes.
Okay. Yep, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Do you want? Was that it, or do you want to?
No. I just, so
Okay.
when the government's paying out £7 billion last year to, victims of vaccine kind of thing, is a vaccine the right way forward on this? Because straight from day one, that's been the agenda: get a vaccine, get a vaccine, get a vaccine kind of thing. Where we haven't even actually looked at, sort of the science about how good vaccines are. What happens to those people which are well affected to them? How long is their damage kind of thing? That's the data I want to study. I don't want to study the 89 people that have had no effects from the vaccines. I want to look at the 11% of people which have shown actually some serious side effects.
Well, you did mention Bill Gates, and let's have a look at Bill Gates. And I know there's a significant delay, so apologies if I'm reading something out to you, then it appears on screen later on.
I think I'm up to speed now. I think I'm good.
All right, so can you see a paper come on the screen? Accountability of International NGOs, written by Sharmeen Ahmed. Should come up soon.
I think I'm about. Yep, got you. Yep.
So the whole Bill Gates sort of conspiracy started when somebody who was a university student at the Golden Gate University of Law, a university student, wrote a paper where they made this statement here: critics have shared concerns on the Gates Foundation, and its policies on population control. And from that, we had people like Candace Owens who'd looked at this paper or scanned it and started making posts. Let's look at the first two tweets she's made. And this is where I'm talking about misinformation. The top one says, Bill Gates and the World Health Organization have used African and Indian tribal children to experiment with non-FDA approved drug vaccines. Both countries raised red flags and were ignored, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But the woman who's saying this, if you look underneath, to be super clear, so this is the woman that a lot of this conspiracy theory is based off. She wants to be super clear. She is not against vaccinations, right? She wants to be super clear on that. So the woman that this kind of theory that vaccinations are all extremely dangerous is not against vaccinations. If we have a look at the paper where that comment come from, it was actually taken from a TED talk. Bill Gates said, parents choose to have kids to give them a high chance. This is in those countries. They choose to have enough kids to give them a high chance that several will survive to support them as they grow old. As the number of kids who survive to adulthood goes up, parents can achieve this without having as many children. And people have taken that and implied it's some sort of population control conspiracy, where it's just a statement. I have got a statement here that tells us how many people died. Just let me find it. Don't tell me I can't find it. I just give it. I'm sorry about this. Right, I can't find the slide. I won't waste your time with it. But you did talk about hundreds of thousands of people dying, etc., didn't you? And I will find this while you're talking. But it was 10.
And again,
10 people. And when you looked at the 10 people that died, one had drowned. And I think one had died of a completely unrelated cause. I think 3 or 4 of those 10 had died from absolutely nothing to do with the thing, to do with the vaccination. So I think it's.
But again, kind of thing. We're looking at two pieces of different evidence, kind of thing, and having our own conclusions. Where I've read and seen videos from people that were directly affected from having that injection, kind of thing, kind of thing. So I've seen their reports, kind of thing. I've heard them talk about it, kind of thing. Again, so you can provide me with any bits of data that you want, kind of thing. But I'm not a scientist, and I certainly haven't got the ability to look into all of these claims and everything else, kind of thing. So again, we're left in our true reality, kind of thing, because you've got so much data, kind of thing. You've got your side of the argument, you've got lots of data backing up the other side of the argument, kind of thing. But I have seen the witness statements, and lots of parents, even in this country, kind of thing, have been affected by vaccines. And I saw a petition of over 1,000 Indian women which lost children, kind of thing, because. So again, we're just comparing data, kind of thing, and who's saying it's right, who's saying it's wrong, because I'm not there actually checking the data myself, kind of thing.
No, you're not, and I think that when we look at everything we've talked about tonight, all the actual data, all the actual peer-reviewed scientific studies, all the data that we can actually quote because we can see it and we can find it, is all on one side of the argument. And it seems that like there's a lot of hearsay of on the other side of, well, I've heard this, I've heard that, I'm not too sure where that information come from. You know, it does seem to me that the solid information is on one side, not the other. But we're going to go to questions in a second. I do have one question for you, and you don't have to answer it because this is you've been really good giving me your time today, and this is more to try and give you something to think about and put you on the spot. So if you don't want to answer it, just tell me you don't want to answer it, and I'll move on. My problem with this, you've said a few times tonight that you're kind of caught in limbo between two sets of data and you don't really know. Would that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Given that has been the case, do you think that people who don't know and haven't made their mind up and still need to look at both sides of the story, do you think people who don't know the facts should be maybe attending rallies where they are trying to promote the removal of sanctions that, if they're wrong, could lead to a lot more deaths? Do you think that the people that are attending these rallies should be people whose minds are fully made up and who do know it 100%? Would that be fair, given the consequences of what might happen if the people rally and get their way? Do you think people should be 100% bob on sure of all the facts? You don't have to answer.
I think no. Look, if you're looking at the stand-up X rallies kind of thing, you know, which is obviously covered with a lot of this kind of thing, you know. I think rallies are a way of getting a lot of information out, which isn't available on the mainstream media. It's an opportunity to meet like-minded people and talk to them kind of thing as well, and share information kind of thing. So are rallies are a good thing? Yeah, rallies are a good thing kind of thing, because it gives you a different viewpoint, and a lot of the speakers give you a lot of further education, so you can take their viewpoints away, you can take their facts away which they're recording to you, and then you can go and look in yourself. Again, you may have come across the same hurdle kind of thing where it goes beyond your science understanding kind of. So again, you have to take a look outside the window and say, is there a pandemic? No. Yeah, so that's where I am kind of thing. But where we have seen big rallies and big massive sort of gatherings of people and everything else, you look at the, you know, what happened at Bournemouth Beach a couple of weeks ago, we had the gorgeous weather kind of thing, you know. Did we see any spike in those people increasing coronavirus cases? Who knows? It's very difficult to tell one way or the other, you know, whether there has been. Did all those people get tested? No, kind of thing, you know. So you can't put it one way or the other whether people should be congregating or not. In terms of people attending the rallies, I know quite a few people that have gone to all the different rallies kind of thing, and all of them, you're encouraged to hug, and you're encouraged to do this, and you're encouraged to do that, and you're standing within a massive pool of people kind of thing, you know. So really, all those people should be, you know, passing on the coronavirus if it is as bad as what it is. So people should be able to go and view opinion kind of thing. If we live in the world that we live in kind of thing, and you're not allowed to actually go out and support, you're not allowed to go to learn, it's a very sad state of affairs for sure.
I get what you're saying there, and I was kind of coming at it from a slightly different angle, but I do appreciate what you said, and I do like the idea of going somewhere and listening to people and, you know, seeing if you can learn bits and bats and the whole social aspect of it. Great. I think my point was. I'll use Piers Corbyn as an example. He's obviously leading rallies with the intention of having lockdown restrictions removed. The consequences of having lockdown restrictions removed, if he's wrong, which I very firmly believe he is that we will have another enormous second spike, and lots of people will lose their grandparents, they will lose members of the family who've got underlying conditions, and there will be a huge number of deaths that would have been avoidable had Piers Corbyn not got his way. Oh, hang on. Crap. I just accidentally turned my TV off. Sorry. He was going to sleep. Give us a second. It's on a timer. That's right. I'm back. So what I'm saying is, given that the consequences are so severe, that if Piers Corbyn gets his own way... I was going to follow it up. I then heard him on an interview on Talk Sport, and he was asked what his opinion was, and he said that vaccines were dangerous. He was giving similar arguments to yourself. But when he was asked to present any sort of actual scientific paper, like I've done today. When he was asked to actually back up where he got his arguments from, Piers Corbyn, the man who's leading the rally, couldn't do it. He didn't know. He said, well, I've seen it. And that was his argument. I've seen it on the internet. I've seen it. I'll find it and I'll get the source to you. But even he didn't know, and he's leading these rallies. So if he's wrong, and it does seem like he's very unsure of his opinion, and thousands of people are going to follow him, and then they get the lockdown overturned, or the restrictions overturned, then people die. Is that right? When the people who've gone to follow him were caught in a limbo and didn't really know either way, when people see them on YouTube and say, God, there were 10,000 people there must be something in it. When really half of those people might actually just be there because they're caught in between two. Does that make sense? Like, supporting stuff like that could make it successful.
Yeah. But there was, if he is wrong, and that's the questionable thing. Is he right? Is he wrong? Who knows, kind of thing, but we'll never know, because we're talking about actions that could happen if something happens, kind of thing, But you say about Piers Corbyn leading that charge there, kind of thing, well, was he really? No. If you actually look at the event in London, kind of thing, was he actually leading the charge? No. It was all hosted by, Dr. Nurse Kate, kind of thing, which would have some wonderful scientific data if you'd actually go and look at her, kind of thing. You had Dr. Edil that came out and spoke, kind of thing, again, who has some wonderful data behind him, kind of thing, again, which for some reason only Piers Corbyn got arrested, surely all these people should be, they was all saying exactly the same message, kind of thing, again. So we're seeing in different actions by the police on that as well, then, kind of thing, because they all should have got done, kind of thing. Look at there's lots of NHS people which are speaking out, kind of thing. Surely they should all be fine, kind of thing, because everyone's a YouTube channel, everyone has a platform now, kind of thing, and is a YouTube is this any different to people speaking out in Leicester Square? We're only giving our opinions, and as far as I'm concerned, everyone else give their own opinion.
I totally get that, and I'm. It's. I think the consequences, the consequences are severe, and I think if we're playing with the idea that we don't know if it's right or wrong or whatever, we don't know if there's a pandemic or not, and we're unsure, and then, ultimately when the whole body of science is saying otherwise, those actions, could be quite harmful. I mean, I know you brought Kate Shimarani up, and I've spoken to her on Twitter. I did try and get her on here, and she was lovely. She was really nice and polite. She was great. I think she was just busy at the time, and she couldn't come on. But when I've followed her account since, etc., I know you mentioned good information, but I haven't seen anything other than kind of her parroting and repeating the things that Dr. Kaufman or Vernon Coleman say, which doesn't kind of hold any water. So I guess my last question to you before I go to the chat is, when you say these people are giving you good information, how do you know it's good information? Because when I present stuff to you, you're not sure. You're like, I'm not really sure. I don't understand that. So how do you know that their information is good information?
Well, I think anybody should actually not give a viewpoint on information that they've been received straight away. So what do? You actually take that information and you go and research it to the best of your ability. But it doesn't necessarily mean that actually what you're viewing gives you the actual truth or not, because, as I said, I'm not a scientist, I'm not in these fields at all, kind of thing. So again, it's down to that. Look, if you question things, if things don't add up in your mind, then just go and look for other people's viewpoints, kind of thing, And that's the only thing from today is, sort of I implore is just get everyone to go out and have a look, kind of thing, have a look at the data, have a look at this and that, and come at your own conclusions. Now, I'm sort of, I'm not denying COVID doesn't exist, kind of thing, absolutely exists, but is it just a rebranded flu? Is it just this flu for this year, kind of thing? And that's what they've called it, COVID-19, kind of thing, because the numbers from 2017, as we talked about earlier, they look identical, kind of thing, So, yeah, just go out there, do your own research, kind of thing, and find things. Because, yes, you can talk about the science behind masks and the size of the molecules and things like this. What you can't deny sort of the social destruction that wearing masks does. And you can't actually quantify how many people are going to suffer from mental health and what this actually does to society by wearing a mask, kind of thing.
There's definitely two different discussions. One is, to me, a very valid one, and one is not. And the valid one is, how do we handle the pandemic, and what restrictions should and shouldn't be put in place, and how that affects, like say, people's mental health and stuff like that. To me, extremely valid discussion, and I'm not the person to have that because I don't have the understanding of, economics and social science and stuff. I think the other argument of is the virus real or is it the flu is not a valid one, because the science really just doesn't support it. I mean, we could talk about how the virus has been sequenced, which means we just look at what all the genetic material is and we see it's completely different to the flu, But I know we're coming from different positions. I know that. Right, we've got some questions, so it's question time. Go on, I've made you giggle.
No, I just saw the last question does ask the guest if he follows Christ. No. Katie, who was it? Katie Hopkins. Sorry, Katie Price. Katie Hopkins. No, no. I detest arrogant people which are rude and obnoxious, so I tend to stay away from that. I prefer intellectual debate for sure.
Okay, we've got some super chats. I will read those out. Some will be questions to you, some to me, and then I'll go into the normal chat box. And if you don't tag Conspiracy Cats in, just tag agree to disagree in, and I will pick those up from the chat, and we can ask them to whoever they're directed to. So, the first one was from Neil Sullivan,
cool.
Who's a bit of a physicist. He's a regular contributor. So, but he's asking, do you think that the position of the atoms in 2018 made COVID inevitable? Is it all just physics conspiring? Is there inevitability about it? No.
Who knows? What's your thoughts first?
There are arguments, aren't there? Is there free will at all, or is it all just physics? But I don't know. I'll stay out of that one. But it is a thought provoker. Next one's from Jessica G. Thank you very much, Jessica. She says, "Why do all COVID deniers Well, we've not actually touched on this, have we? Coincidentally, believe in every other conspiracy theory." So you managed to talk about 9/11 being a hoax. The most obvious question is, are you anti-vax as well? We've talked about anti-vax. You are anti-vax, aren't you?
Yeah, no, none of my children have had vaccines or anything else like that kind of thing. They're all perfectly healthy and everything else. I think the body's a wonderful, wonderful developed and designed thing which fights an awful lot, so we don't need to do that.
So Jessica's question about other conspiracy... Sorry, go on. Yeah, other conspiracy... Like, do you think that
other conspiracy things...
there's a reason that you perhaps believe in a lot of the conspiracies? Is that your nature just to lean towards, if a conspiracy is named, is it your nature to tend towards it?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I talked about 9/11 kind of thing, look, with 9/11 kind of thing, I'm on the fence kind of thing, but the one thing I did point out in 9/11, which is factual and proof, and everyone can go and see that now, was my enlightenment to the media lying. Building 7 was live on TV kind of thing, and they said it collapsed. That was only supposedly the third building in history that's collapsed by fire, steel building from fire. The first two being the First World War 1 and 2 kind of thing. I can't confirm the rest of 9/11 or whether it was hoax or not, but all I can confirm as fact is the BBC reported that building had collapsed 20 minutes live before it actually collapsed. So that's the only thing. Yeah, so that's the only thing. Yeah, so that is the only thing that I'm aware of actually drawn, attention to of the things. In terms of conspiracies, I look at both sides of the argument, and 9 times out of 10, I'm not qualified enough to confirm one or the other. And a lot of the times I'm not there. I'm not in the coalface. I'm not making the decisions. So it's hard for me to actually sit on one side or the other of truth.
See, I mean, what you said there rings. Because I've had discussions like this in the past with people who make a lot of content, put a lot of content out, and state things as fact. So, for example, I make a lot of videos debating or debunking the idea of the Earth being flat, for example. And there were people out there, I don't need to name them, but there are people out there who will state things as fact when they are, as ridiculous as Kaufman's take on Koch's postulates, if you like. But they are stating them as fact. Whereas what you're doing is different. You're taking stuff in, you're making your mind up, but you're not out there kind of like you're not a source of misinformation, if you know what I mean. You're just making your mind, and I respect that. That's fine. You're not pushing it on other people. Pick a pup.
No,
What's
look,
happening now?
I've got no channel, kind of thing. I don't portray anything at all, kind of thing. The only thing I do is I look into things that don't make sense, but I can't deny or or push any narrative because I'm not a particular expert within that. But in terms of flat Earth and things like this, there's a lot of strawman exercises, along that sort of path, kind of things. A lot that work on both, kind of thing. But is the Earth flat or is it a globe? Who knows? I don't know. But when you actually look at pure science, where you're actually looking at a law as opposed to physics, and the chap that was into physics hopefully might be able to jump in as well, kind of thing. When you look at Newton's fourth law of thermodynamics that says that two pressurized systems can't work next to each other, such as the vacuum of space next to the pressurized globe, without a solid barrier, then hold on, if that is true, then your globe system falls apart straight away.
Yeah, I think that one. I mean, that's similar to Kaufman on Koch's postulates and stuff. It's using a scientific term in the. But anyway, it's not a flat Earth debate. But that's anyone who watches my stuff knows that's been done to death. But Bad Uncle Bob, for some reason I can't see what his super chat. I think I remember it, but it seems to have gone hidden. And he said, "Is a virus a kind of thing?" Yes, I don't know. It's a virus. It's a
thing.
What do you think a virus is? What do you think a virus is?
Well, pre-COVID, right? and learning all people's different theories about viruses, kind of thing. My belief was a virus is something which you can catch and something you can spread them. Will give you things like colds and coughs and everything else, kind of thing. So that is my raw understanding of what a virus is. But obviously, when you look at other people's different opinions, where no, the virus is within us and the virus is the antibody that goes against the bad things coming to your body, again, it's so confusing. So I think a virus is catchable and spreadable. I go back to my basic understanding because there's too much science out there that I don't understand.
Right, now there's some for the chat. I will just scroll down and I won't take too much more of your time. I really appreciate what you've done tonight. Let's just see. If you've not tagged me in on Agree to Disagree, I'm going to miss it. Best name on the internet here. Craven Mordick. That's his name. Craven Mordick. You should point out that dihydrogen monoxide has killed more people than all vaccines ever combined. So I think he's talking about drowning. Okay, so this is from Pete Bramble.
I think that's...
So go on.
Yeah. Oh, just on that point, I was going to say, kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, even if you look COVID, kind of thing, you were saying yes, that's killed more than X. Brilliant. If you look at the top deaths around the world, kind of thing, and where COVID is now, I think it's about number 10. Kind of thing. There's so many more things which are killing people. If you look on the WHO website for car accidents, last 10 years, 1.1 million people have died in car accidents, kind of thing. But we don't go around banning cars because they're unnecessary. We look at the risk and we take our own judgments up against that risk. Same with COVID. Do we destroy the economy, kind of thing? Do we destroy millions of people's jobs? That'll have a massive knock-on effect on people's health and well-being, kind of thing. So again, it's a really difficult point, kind of thing.
It is. I mean, I guess, and with cars and stuff, obviously we put safety features in place. We do what we can, and I think that's it. We do what we can, and with COVID, we are doing what we can. Pete Bremble says, if masks are not effective, would you be happy to undergo surgery without the surgeons wearing a mask?
No, because that's for two different things. Obviously, when a surgeon wears a mask, a lot of it is to stop bits falling out and bits coming into. It's not about the spreading of disease. Surgical masks stop things falling out of the mouth and going into the patient primarily. But yeah, look, if masks did work 110% kind of thing, then why would the government be encouraging us all go out to restaurants on Monday to Wednesday without masks and sit and eat around each other and pass all our COVID germs onto knives and forks and cutleries and tables and everything else? If masks worked, surely masks should be in every single environment, not where the government choose to pick where it needs helping out the.
I think you just broke up. Are you still there? I've got a bad connection.
Yeah.
Cool. Bad Uncle Bob. I have seen his post now. He said COVID is a real kind of thing. Stephen Steen says, why do you believe vaccines are dangerous when the percentage of complications and death due to vaccines are far smaller than COVID-related hospitalizations and death.
I see that as two different things. COVID which is killing people kind of thing. A vaccine is coming to cure it. When I'm talking about other vaccines which has had adverse effects to many thousands of people kind of thing, I'm talking about that individual vaccine and what it's actually done to those. So I don't really see them relating too much.
Okay, I think his point with that was that, like, you talked about managing risk and reward earlier on, and or risk v benefit at least, and I'm not going to say that nobody's ever had a reaction to a vaccine. I'm not going to say that at all. But when we look at the number of lives that is saved compared to the number of complications, it's a drastic difference. Debunk the Funk says,
but
go on. Sorry, you're all right. Crack on.
I was just going to say again, but how do you quantify that? How do you quantify that it has saved that person? Because that's person saved. You know, it hadn't been saved simply because of the vaccine kind of thing, because you can't say they would have died if they didn't have the vaccine.
Well, you look at what happens before a creation of a vaccine, and then you look at what happens after the creation of a vaccine. Are people still dying left, right, and centre because of Ebola virus? Now there's a vaccine. You know, so you look before, you look at. I mean, we look at COVID now when the vaccine's created. You know, I mean, I'm not for mandatory vaccinations, but I'll quite happily have one, and I'm sure lots of people will have one. And then you'll see, you know, more of a herd immunity in the population, and you'll see far less of a spread and deaths because of COVID. So I think that's what he's getting at. How do you feel about the thousands of previously healthy COVID patients who are now suffering from long-term debilitating symptoms?
Oh yeah, well, as I touched on earlier, kind of thing. You know, my sister had COVID at the start of this. You know, kind of thing. She was probably about 4 weeks into lockdown, kind of thing. She caught it, and she's left with a massively decreased sense of smell and taste, kind of thing. You know, which you wouldn't normally get with the flu, kind of thing. So absolutely, there is going to be massive long-term sort of effects to hundreds of people. Who knows if this is going to come back for those people worse in the winter as well? We just simply don't know.
Remember old-fashioned trousers? I think. Did you mention 2 boys dying in China because he had a mask? Is that something you said before?
Yeah. So I read that on one of the school's websites. Yeah.
Right. I think he's just using that in the question. He's saying, so if 2 boys in China died while all the children had to wear a mask, does that mean that before masks were enforced, every single death was because they weren't wearing masks? He's saying, so essentially, how can you? Yeah.
No, but yeah, look, you know, and again, what was the condition of those kids, kind of thing? We don't know that. But if they wasn't wearing masks, would they have died or would they not have died? Again, you don't know, kind of thing, you know. But my whole point about the masses, obviously, as I said earlier, there's 8,000 studies which confirm, you know, that a decrease in oxygen levels, a restriction of the oxygen airways coming into you, and the rebreathing that circulates behind it. These are 8,000 different scientific studies, not mine. You know, these are scientific papers. And again, you know, fear, again, it destroys your immune system as well. So that was my point about the mask kind of thing. These 3 things are bad for your immune system. And nobody wants a bad immune system, especially when we may get a second spike of COVID.
I think from my point of view, you hit on something pretty important there. Like, you talked about these thousands of scientific papers, you know, research, etc. And I think whenever I do a debate, you know, certainly in more recent months, I'll try and come with the power, like I've done tonight. You know, I'll bring scientific papers, etc. And I'll bring as much as I can, because you know, it just helps me massively. But like Piers Corbyn today, when he was asked on that TalkSport interview, when he was asked, like, where is your scientific papers? What are they? All he could say was, "Oh, there's loads of them. They're out there." But he couldn't name one or bring one. And I just kind of feel that, like, the default kind of fallback from a lot of the people arguing on kind of like your side of the fence is that, though there's loads of science, it backs it up, but I'm not going to show you what it is because it's out there. Just go and look for it. You know, I've never once had somebody bring me one of these papers, and like that makes me question whether they exist. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely, kind of thing. And again, are you actually reading what is a scientific paper and what's coming out, kind of thing? Who knows? Because there's so much misinformation, and everything else, kind of thing. But I have seen an awful lot of these papers. I haven't got one to hand, but I'm more than happy to do a follow-up episode to this in whatever time period you want to do, kind of thing, and come back and address some of these arguments, which are slightly grey areas, kind of thing, because from my own selfish point of view, kind of thing, the reason why this was so appealing to me, being part of this, was to actually try and educate myself and get another person's viewpoint. Now, obviously, you're far more qualified than me, so hopefully I can go away, take all these points, kind of thing, go and do some different investigations of my own, kind of thing. Now you've enlightened me to these facts.
Well, I'd love to have you back on. I would absolutely love to have you back on and either correct me, or say, either way, just let us know what you think. I'd say, no, I still don't agree with you, or actually you've convinced me. I would love to have you back on, and you're welcome anytime. I'm just going to take two more questions.
Yeah.
So go
on. I think we've got a long way to go, kind of thing, in this current sort of whatever we're in at the moment, kind of thing. We're only the start of it, and I think you're probably going to get that second spike, and I think you're going to get even more destruction to the economy, kind of thing. And the data that we're looking now compared to the actual data that we'll have on mass wearing about kids going back and everything else, kind of thing, at school, there's got to be, the good thing about this, there's an awful lot of information coming up on the time, so it's an ever evolving story, if it is a story. So hopefully, yeah, there'll be loads more out to discuss in next week, let alone next month.
That's why I was just something popped up, but no, that sounds spot on. We've had another super chat for $5 from Jessica G. So she says, just let me have a look at that. Sometimes I've got to rephrase these. I think Jessica G says that I think you need to improve your understanding on some of these topics, which you've just said. You've just said is what you're going to do, and then come back and we could have a chat about it. I think that would be absolutely great.
Yeah, no, look, it's all about learning, isn't it, kind of thing, So brilliant. I'll take all of these points up and have a look at them.
And I've lost where I was. I've lost the live chat, but I think we're pretty much done now anyway. So I think that's the last of the questions, pretty much. Yeah, Bacon Earth does say the same. I just said, can you provide a link to these papers? So if you do find, when you go away afterwards, if you do find some links to the papers you were talking about, if you're happy to send them to us, I can put them in the description of this video, and then people can click on and see. You know what I mean? That would be that would be superb. But can I just thank you very much for your time?
Yeah, no, look, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your time.
Yeah, I mean, it's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed this. I'd never normally do this kind of thing, but who would I be if I didn't, sort of stand by the things that I say, So it's been really great. It's been an education, and I will look into all these points, kind of thing. But it's been some of the comments in the chat, kind of thing, of coming through again, kind of thing. There's some really good things there. Thousands of people have died from this vaccine, and thousands of people have died from that vaccine, kind of thing. Which again, I haven't actually looked at. So I will take a lot of these points in the chat as well, kind of thing, and look into them, because your chat's been brilliant. It's been really, really busy all night.
It has been busy. I'm not sure what we peaked at. I think I know we hit over 200 at one point, but it will keep picking viewers up as time goes on. Hopefully, obviously we've got very, very different viewpoints. Hopefully you don't regret coming on. You don't feel as if you've been hijacked or anything like that. My thing is that when you go back to the group that we first made contact in, I won't say what that is, but like that you're, if anybody asks, how did that go, etc., that you'll be able to say to people, I was heard out, I wasn't overspoken, I wasn't shouted over, it was polite, it was civil, and then that way we can get more people coming on and have more conversations like this. So hopefully you don't regret.
Oh no, look, I strongly recommend It's been absolutely fantastic kind of thing. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, I was a bit nervous and worried at the start kind of thing. I've never done anything like this. So it has been a thoroughly enjoyable experience. Thank you very much, sir.
No, well, thank you, because without people coming on, giving the time up, we wouldn't have a show. So I really, really appreciate it. And I'll say goodbye properly to you off air. Everybody else, just, yeah, thank you very much for being here. And I know I'm not as good looking as Creaky, but I'm sure, well, I've done my best. What can I say? And I will see you all